Welcome to the place where we learn about improv, 'cause public speaking can take you so far. Improv speaking, say yes and flex your creative thinking. Improv speaking, say yes and flex your creative thinking.
Hello, 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 and welcome to the Improv Speaking podcast. I'm your host, Dayna Gowan. I'm so excited that you're joining us today for an incredible episode. I'm so excited about today's guest. It'll be fantastic. We're going to have a blast. If you're new, joining us for the first time, welcome. I'm so excited that you're here. And if you're returning, you probably know the spiel already, but let me just do a quick rundown of what we're all about here at the Improv Speaking podcast. We like to help people understand the benefits of improvisation and how improv can change your life, or at least give you the tools and skills to change your life. You may not want to call things life-changing. That might be a bit exaggerative or dramatic for you. But I think improv is definitely a game changer, and it's been a game changer in my life. So the goals are to show everyone how improv can be a game changer. Also, we're here to demonstrate how improv shows up in all aspects of our lives and inspire people to try new things, get out of your heads and judgment zones, and find creative outlets and passions that can help you. So that's a tall order, but we've accomplished it in every single episode we've done, and I have no doubts we'll do that again today because our guest today is an experienced and incredible improviser, performer, teacher, and life coach. Let me introduce you to our special guest, Joe Van Haecke. Joe is based in Des Moines, Iowa. He is the chief of inspiration for his company, Inspire Me, Mr. V, which provides improv-inspired life coaching to help people start living a yes and life in a yeah but world. And we'll get into what that means. I love that motto, that slogan. That's so cool. Joe has been performing and coaching improvisation for over 20 years and has performed in Des Moines, Chicago, Minneapolis, and Kansas City, Missouri. He is also an applied improv facilitator who helps attendees become better active listeners, idea supporters, risk takers, stronger leaders, and so much more. Please welcome the super inspiring and inventive Joe Van Haecke. Welcome, Joe.
Good afternoon, Dayna. I'm excited to be here and looking forward to our talk.
I'm so excited as well, Joe. I know we've talked a few times, and every time we talk, I'm like, I should have been recording this. This is so much fun. So I'm glad we're finally here recording now. You have such a great spirit and energy about you. So I know you're just going to have that infectious energy and spirit today, too.
It's going to be a great time, and I've been looking forward to it all morning. I wish some days that I had a recorder going on me at all times, because sometimes I say platitudes that like people around me are like, oh, yes. And 2 days later, what did I say? What was so profound? I don't know. Maybe it'll come back.
You have to write it down or make a note, an audio note, a written note. That is what I'm learning now. I'm taking a stand-up class and I get these ideas for bits and jokes and I get them late at night. Like my inspiration for jokes and stuff comes at the end of the night. I think it might be because my judgment zone is down a bit. Maybe I'm tired. I don't know, but I get all these ideas and I'm like, I'll remember in the morning. Nope, you do not remember in the morning. You have to write it down.
In my mind, I've written the best, greatest American novel 3 times, but I can never remember it because I don't write it down.
I know. See, all that we could do, just write it down. Don't let your brain fool you to be like, oh no, I'll remember. No, I don't trust you, brain. I'm writing this down for safekeeping.
And Dayna, I know you've got some questions and a path and an order that you want to take, but I just want to make a note for us now.
Yes,
let's make sure that we come back to that judge or that judgy voice or whatever you're calling it about talking about your stand-up, because that's one of the things about letting improv transform your life. And I want to make sure that we talk about that sometime today.
I am writing that down right now because that is so important. And yeah, we will definitely get into that. And for our listeners, everyone who's joining us today, Joe and I met through the magic of the LinkedIn algorithm. And Joe, sometimes I get in my LinkedIn bubble and I see a lot of applied improvisers posting. And I think that's the world. Like when you're doing something, you tend to follow people who are doing the same things as you. And sometimes I get in my head about I'm being an imposter. Is the market too saturated in this? And, it's again that judgy voice coming in a little bit. And literally yesterday, I saw your blog article on LinkedIn about success is not a competition. It was the perfect time for it. And you wrote about how the number one person we are competing against is ourselves. And I just want to thank you for that because I needed to hear that yesterday. And I bet it was helpful for other people as well.
Well, I certainly hope so. Thank you for mentioning that, Dana, because sometimes I put a lot of posts out there about once a week. I never know if they reach anything. And I sometimes think I used to be a high school teacher, and it feels like every student that comes back and says thank you, you have to remember that there's probably 3 or 4 in the classroom that recognize, but just for some reason or another, don't feel the move to thank you. So I think the same thing works on the socials is that, man, what Joe wrote today, that really spoke to me. But something get distracts you and we don't like it, we don't comment and we don't share it. So anybody, if you're trying to support each other or you have people that with something really speaks to you as a content developer and creator out there, like it, share it, comment on it. It doesn't take that long. Just do 5 a day. We'll all be super appreciative of it. However, Dana, I love hearing that type of feedback one-on-one. Thank you so much.
Of course, it is. It's a nice ego boost to hear. Yeah. And I try to do that more too now. I've definitely been a lurker before on social media and stuff of consuming content and being like, that's cool, but never commenting. But now I know what it feels like when people say, I enjoy your content and I enjoy what you're putting out there. So I try to pay it forward and do that for other people as well.
Perfect. Love it.
Well, and the thing I love too about this applied improv world is that, and this podcast really, is that I get to meet people from all over the US and the world now too. We are an international podcast. We've had international guests. And Joe, now I have a friend in Des Moines, Iowa that I can come visit when there's improv stuff going on there.
Smack dab in the middle of the heartland. We're pretty proud of where we are. So
well, and it's cool to hear, about the improv world in Des Moines. So I know we'll get into that. And really, my first question for you is kind of the biggest question of, how'd you get started in improv? Tell us about your improv journey.
Oh, I so love this story. I'm going to give you even the long version.
Yes, please.
Yeah, growing up, I always wanted to be a stand-up comic. My parents had Bill Cosby records and Smothers Brothers records, and then I discovered Steve Martin records and some George Carlin records, and just the way, especially in his prime, when Cosby could just weave a story and take you down this path and the audience is rolling. And I thought, man, that would be great. So I had that in the back of my mind. And high school and college just went deeper and deeper. And I didn't know about Chicago when I graduated from Iowa State. So I just went on my merry way. There was a local gentleman here in Des Moines that was giving a 6-week, what he called a comedy college, a 6-week workshop for stand-ups. And I went through that as soon as I found out about it, and I had a fantastic time. And then went on and did a few other shows myself, and then just hit a wall. And about that time, I moved down to Kansas City and put stand-up on the back burner again. Maybe 2 or 3 months in Kansas City, my roommate and I, who was my best friend for life, my brother from another mother, we're having a grill out. His cousin and her roommates are over, and some other friends are over. And I'm just being me. I'm just riffing. I don't even know what I was saying. And Steve and Meredith are laughing so hard. They're like, you have to come check out this comedy sports thing. We think you'd be really good at it. And I'm like, who, what? Yes, let's go. So we went to a show that weekend. And I think it was the weekend after they announced, hey, we're having auditions if you want to come try out. I'm like, yes, please. So the week passed. I get to the comedy sports. And I'm sitting in the waiting room and just talking to some of the other people there, get called in for the audition. And as I left, I talked to one of the people. I said, I don't know if I made it or not, but if there's a way, if there's classes or workshops, I would really like to know about that. And he said, okay, good to, I'll put you on the list. Later that week, I got the call, Joe, we really enjoyed you. We want you to come join the cast. And I about fell out of my chair.
Yay!
So the way it started is then there were 4, maybe 5 weeks of workshops with this new cast. And then slowly, when they felt you were ready, you got drawn into the established cast and then got some stage time. My first day at the workshop, I'm looking around and I see a lot of the people that I recognize from the auditions and maybe some faces that I didn't. But what I picked up on quickly was, oh, these people have already been taking workshops. So something in my audition must have stood out that said, oh, let's at least give him a chance. And I really haven't looked back since. So I performed for 3 years with Comedy Sports out of Kansas City. And I moved back to Des Moines and joined a small troupe that was performing in coffee shops here. Then they fell apart, but I wasn't done. And so I started my own troupe, and that was 20 years ago. Along the line somewhere, I started coaching high school. Iowa has a really strong speech competition that then breaks down into many different categories, such as group improvisation, solo mime, group mime, one act, readers theater, musical theater, choral reading, all these different categories. One of my wife's friends was the director at a local high school. And she said, I understand you do improv. That scares the bejesus out of me. Can you come coach my teams? And so I've been doing that for almost 20 years. Along that line, I ended up realizing how much I enjoyed teaching. I went back and got a teaching certificate. And I've just found that the more I can weave improv theory and improv, all these components that we are going to talk about today, but start applying them in a daily basis, makes the world so much of a better place. So I said a lot. Please ask questions.
Oh, I'm taking it all in. It sounds like your stage presence. So did you do theater in high school and such?
I did not. And I look back trying to reflect, why did I not do theater? I don't know. I don't have an answer for that. Maybe it was because I thought I was a band geek, and maybe I thought they were theater dorks, or I just didn't make time
The
to
turfs.
do it.
Yeah, the turf
Right?
wars.
Da 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 da
Yeah.
da 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 da. Cool. Nevertheless, I didn't. And somewhere along the line after college, when I was working in different businesses and different organizations, I just thought I'd like to try some theater. And I've done some scripted theater stuff, but it just doesn't appeal to me as much as I just want to perform and coach and play. And improv covers all that.
Well, it sounds like your stand-up experience and your stage experience that you had at least got you the improv gig that got you past the audition at least. So you had some
Yeah.
really good stage presence to begin with that you've developed along the way, which is awesome.
Yeah, thank you. I remember the audition process, but I don't remember much of what I did. It was, you had to get up and talk about yourself for a minute and then do a short scene. And that sounds like, oh, no big deal. Have you ever tried to talk about yourself just for a full minute? It's harder than it sounds.
It is.
Yeah. And then I did a scene, and the suggestion was bakery. And I came in as a number of different characters. I don't know. Maybe it just worked out, but
Yeah. No, the stars align. That's amazing. And it really sets you on this path. That's wonderful. I ask this of a lot of our improviser guests. How has improv and comedy in general helped you in your life in this 20-year span of improvising?
improv has helped me slow down so I can go fast. And that's a phrase that I heard at Association of Trainers and Developers, ATD, at a meeting. And then I've learned that it's been taken from the military. We have to go slow and steady so we can be fast. Because if you're going fast all the time, there's no faster gear. But then things fall through the cracks and we don't make sure that we do the process or make all the checks and balances. For me, improv, in what I like to call that yes and moment, forces us to slow down. So talking to improvisers out there, but maybe if you're not familiar with improv, when we talk about yes and, the number one thing is like, we're going to fully listen to the sentence that my scene partner says. When I'm directing or coaching and teaching improv, I even have an activity of like, you have to wait to respond to the person you're working with finishes talking, and you have to say the last 3 words that they said, and then say yes and. I force that on as a learning
Mm.
concept. I call the yes and moment of when you stop speaking and I say yes to your ideas or yes to your comments. And now I get to choose how I respond. I get to choose how I'm going to and or accept and build on your idea. And so I have to go slow. Seasoned improvisers, maybe like you've seen somebody in a live show or on Whose Line Is It Anyway, or even of us that are just doing it as a hobby. You think, wow, how are they thinking so fast? We're not. We're actually slowing down. We're just so skilled at it now that it's second nature. That's part of, to me, the transformative power of studying improvisation is that it teaches us to accept and build and to slow down in a world that's just asking us to go fast, fast, fast.
I love that. I love that exercise of saying the last three words. I've done exercises before where you use the last word and incorporate it into how you respond for the next sentence. But I like the last three words because that really makes you focus too.
Exactly. And then, if I'm coaching for performers, like workshops, like eventually we want to perform on stage, then I keep scaffolding up of getting to the last word and then getting to, all right, you don't have to repeat anything, but I want you to make sure that you say yes and da 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 da. And then we can drop the yes and part and just get to the da 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 and then the scene. But it's a skill, it's a process, much like learning how to drive a car. We can't go right on the interstate right away. We need to learn how to maneuver through our neighborhood first.
It's so interesting you mention the slow down so you can go fast. When I first started improv, I'm about 3.5 years into my improv journey, and I've loved every minute of it. It's just been so much fun. But when I first started, it felt like every scene needed to be dramatic and hectic and chaotic because that's what we see on TV. There's a lot of conflict and drama, and we think that conflict and drama is what makes the shows interesting. And when you really dial it back, it's like the relationships and the connections are what's interesting. And certainly there's a pacing to it. But yeah, when you first start out doing these improv classes, you're like, I need to make it interesting right off the bat and I need to discover something. And there's so much pressure. So I love your reminder, slow down so you can go fast later.
Totally. And I see that with new improvisers. I still coach high school competitive teams. And then sometimes that turns into working with them even after they're out of high school or in the local improv scene. I do some coaching. And it seems to me that our first instinct when we start learning improv is, I'm going to come up with a funny accent and a goofy voice. And this is my character. And I'm just going to steamroll everything. And
Yeah.
yeah. Which, I mean, there's a place for those characters. Don't get me wrong. But still, you mentioned the word relationship. That's the foundation of everything that I believe in
Mhm.
improv is you have to build that relationship first. And then if you want to play new choice or some of the other gimmicks that we add on to the short form games, great, perfect, love it. Focus on that relationship. I'm going to drop a name. I've studied with Jimmy Carrane a number of times and taken his
Yeah.
workshops. And that's where I learned, oh, it's about the relationship first. And the importance of that is it helps your scene go better. And I take that into the applied improv world of everybody that you interact with in your daily basis, whether you're a team member, whether you're a manager, whether you're a supervisor, you're the CEO, regardless, everything you interact with somebody else is a scene. Let's slow down and make sure we're focusing on that relationship. And then we can build that up rather than tearing it down.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that is, of course, one of my questions. And you and I are biased. We both believe that improv is super helpful for everyone in their personal and professional lives. But for anyone who's listening who still needs to be sold on it, what would you say to them for how the skills of improv translate to our personal and professional lives?
That's a fantastic question. And sometimes that's a hard sell to get people to see that we're applying these skills. So I really talk about what you've seen on Whose Line It Is anyway. And I use that example because it's so well known and so relevant. Is
Yes.
improv. You've got to understand that these people have been studying it for so long. And when I go into an improv workshop, I'm not asking you to be funny. I'm not asking you to bring the silly voice or anything. We're going to set that aside because I want you to be authentic and I want you to be real. And I'm going to really dive into what it means to say yes and. Because I think that term, it feels to me that term has been thrown around a lot. and everybody picks up on the, oh, improv, yes, and this means this means this. That's not the case. And I like how Kat Koppett says it's really accepting and building. So
Yes.
I'm gonna listen and accept your idea, and I'm gonna build on it. And here's my new idea, this bigger thing that I've created with your help. I'm gonna send it to you because you're gonna say yes, and you're gonna accept and build on top of that. So really, when we talk about improv skills, the skills underneath the art form, the process underneath this art form that we love so much, can help us transform to become better communicators, better collaborators, and stronger leaders. I have a fellow teacher that we would go out Friday after work and just get in these monster big discussions and be talking about what's going on in the world. And these two countries are in big conflict or whatnot. And I was always dropped like, what would help this situation is some improv.
Yeah.
And he would just smile and laugh. Finally, and he was a social studies teacher. Finally, he just stopped. He's like, you keep saying that, Joe. What do you mean? And I just explained to him like how we use improv to build relationships and how we use improv to slow down and listen and be authentic and active in our listening and then build on ideas rather than butting heads. We're working together. And he just sat back and he let that sit in for a moment. He's okay. I see where you're coming from. We both of us have since moved on. He now lives in Chicago, but he comes back in town every so often. We get back together, and you can bet cold hard cash that somewhere in our conversation, at least one time, he's either going to look at me or I'm going to look at him and go, improv, as the solution to whatever we're discussing.
Yeah, and I want to build on that yes and piece. Is I feel like sometimes, improv is like it's play and it's silliness and it's an opportunity to just try new things, of course. And I always give a little asterisk there of this doesn't mean go rogue and like burn the place down and just yes and whatever, like woohoo, we're free now. Like it's not, it is certainly a freeing mindset, but there are always like rules, processes, and procedures to follow. And we're not saying to just do away with all rules, processes, procedures, systems in place. It's more accepting the reality and then like, how can we build it? How can we change it? What's the task at hand and how can we improve it together and collaborate?
Dayna, you said it perfectly, so much better than I ever could. I have to explain to my friends and to people I meet and to coworkers, yes and doesn't mean that we're going to accept everything.
Yeah.
Yes and is a tool for us to listen and, as you said, accept and be willing to listen and then build up to maybe something that we can do. In a business world where we're generating ideas, sometimes we're going to yes and ourselves until that's way beyond the scope of anything we've imagined. Okay, great. However, everybody on our team feels seen and heard, and everybody wants to feel seen and heard. And that's important because then everybody has buy-in and everybody's voice has value. Another transformational impact of studying and applying improv to everyday life.
Well, speaking of transformational, so you are an improv-inspired life coach. And I got to tell you, when I heard this, I was like, this is genius. You're the only person I know doing it. I don't know if you know of others, but this is just such a genius concept. You literally said yes and to the concept of yes and have built this coaching business now where I mentioned it in your bio. Your business motto is start living a yes and life in a yeah but world. So can you explain more of what that means?
Why, sure, Dayna. We have plenty of time, right? Because this might take a while.
We've got we've got all the time for you, Joe.
Love it. Love it. So you may remember this pandemic thing that kind of shut down the world a number of years ago.
Slightly, yeah.
Did you experience that? Because we felt it in Des Moines.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Anyway, it was during that time, I'm a member of the International Coaching Federation, the Iowa chapter, and they asked me to come and give an improv workshop via Zoom. And it went over by gangbusters. So it's all these coaches that I know that I've met either in person or over Zoom at that time and had 15, 20 different coaches. And I had a morning session and an afternoon session. One woman came back to the afternoon session. She wasn't planning on it, But she said, I had such a great time in the morning session. I wanted to come and see it and do it again. Even though I did the same exercises, the pathway that it took, just due to the nature of improv and different people having that group mindset that we talk about, took the exercises in different directions. She contacted me the next day and was asked if I could do this one-on-one individually. Yes. And in the back of my mind is, I don't know how I'm going to do this, but we're going to do it anyway, because yes, and right. I gave her a package of 10 sessions for a certain amount, and we met weekly via Zoom for an hour each session. As a professional and as a person stepping into the coaching world and as an improviser that's doing applied improv, of course, I had a lesson plan set up. I had my first 5 weeks planned of these are the exercises we're going to do. The first session, we're talking and kind of getting past that. How are things going? How you doing? All right, let's. And she said, I just want coaching this first time. I said, okay. And the hour went by like that. The next week came and we did some coaching follow up from before and some of the things that she said she was going to go to work on over the week. And then she said, all right, let's do some improv. So I started with yes and. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with this exercise, Dayna, or how many of our listeners are, but I run to show the power of yes and, especially when I'm doing corporate workshops. We start off as like, all right, we're going to plan a vacation together.
Love
and
that
you're
one.
going to say something, and then I'm going to say yes, but. And especially at corporate workshops, when there's a lot of people, I've seen people almost get to the point of shouting because they're fighting for their ideas so much, but they're not listening to each other. Let's go to Cancun. Yeah, but the weather's too hot. Let's go to Alaska. Yeah, but it's it's like, and I think that people don't understand what yes and means or the effect they're having when they're yeah butting people until they feel it internally. So we did that exercise, 90 seconds trying to plan a party or a vacation. Then we turned it around and said, this time say yes and. Another 90 seconds. Even over Zoom, the energy went from 180 degrees to the positive. There were smiles, there was laughter. We both had a really good time. And then when I'm doing applied improv workshops or life coaching, we take time to debrief. And we talk about, what are you feeling here inside? Oh, I'm feeling a little frustrated. Okay, where are you feeling that frustrated? It's in my jaw and I feel it in the back of my neck. Aha. When else do you feel that? And so we got talking really into what's a different choice when you can feel that to maybe avoid frustration. Because when you feel frustrated, what happens? I start talking this way. And then what happens with your scene partner? Well, they shut down and now we're butting heads. So we talked about all through this whole yes and then she stops. She takes a deep breath in and she's like, I was like, yes. I feel I'm in a yeah, but relationship with my husband, and I want it to be a yes and relationship.
Wow, that's so powerful.
Exactly. And I just left that out there because it was so powerful and so validating. But in the back of my mind, I'm like, thank you for that phrase because I'm going to use it. And so now it's become my catchphrase of either let's live a yes and life while surrounded by yeah, but people, or start living a yes and life in a yeah, but world. It jumps between those two different phrases, but so that's how I got there.
Well, and I want to call out, I run a similar exercise. I add in, if there's time, I'll add in no because first. So we'll do no because, yes, but, and then yes and, which can be a lot energy-wise, like the three things.
Sure.
But essentially, the discoveries that get made is yes, but is another way to say no because. We're just like being more passive-aggressive about it.
Wow. Thanks, Dayna. I'm taking that into my, I'm going to steal that and put it back into my toolbox.
I've gotten it from someone else. They got it from someone else. It's the wonderful game of applied improv telephone. But it's really, because when we go, yeah, but we really want to just be like, no, I don't think that works. But we're trying to be nice about it and be like, yeah, but what about this? And we're really just saying no. So yeah, it kills the energy. Either way, no because or yeah, but crushes the energy.
Ironically enough, I was in a meeting yesterday with a bunch of other professionals, and they know me and they know what I bring. So one woman was responding to stuff. She's like, yes, and yet, I'm like,
That's
I didn't want to call
funny.
her out because I'm like, that's not my place. But I'm like, you're suddenly still saying yes, but.
It's like she knew what she was doing, but she still wanted to say no there. And again, to your point, we can't say yes and, or it's not even that we can't. It's there's a time and a place where yes and is really, really good in brainstorming meetings. And when we're talking to ourselves too, like this is a personal thing. Yes, and you can always kind of go back and forth with people, but it's how you're saying it too. And if you find that you're constantly saying no or yes, but then that's something to notice, right?
Exactly. Exactly. I like that we have to even apply it to ourselves. And
Yeah.
in this journey that I'm on and getting into life coaching and reading more, thinking about this more, really started paying attention to what's the language that we use and how does that affect ourselves in and of itself. For example, people say, I'm sorry all the time. And
Yep,
my thought
me.
is like,
Pointing to me.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, I'm guilty myself. But we say sorry sometimes for the smallest things that, if you
Mhm.
hadn't even mentioned it, nobody would have noticed. And I just wonder, what are we doing to our own psyche when we keep apologizing? If we're apologizing all the time, how is our brain interpreting that? So, in a similar fashion, if we start saying yes and all the time, or thinking yes and, that's putting us in a more open space and mindset of being open and present for each other, as well as accepting and building on each other's ideas. In a similar fashion, because if you apply yes and all the time, like you said, it can get out of control. And we need to be careful that we're not yes anding ourselves to the point that we're giving other people too much permission. So I say you need to yes and yourself first. You need to take care of yourself first. You can take care of those around you or your scene partners. And first of all, you need to say yes and to your boundaries. And if you don't know what your boundaries are and you're feeling stressed out or wiped out or feeling like I have so much on my plate and everybody keeps asking me for more and more and more and more, maybe it's time to step out for a weekend and do some reflecting and say yes to what boundaries you're willing to establish. And then yes and yourself so you're brave enough to tell those around you that you love, these are my boundaries. Whatever shape or however that sounds, that's up to you, but it's important. And it's important. I always catch myself when I say that.
I love the idea of saying yes and to your boundaries. That's a great way to rephrase it because boundaries involve saying no as a complete sentence. You don't have to
Yeah.
justify your no when boundaries are involved. And that is true. And that goes along with it. I always like to say that I'm not encouraging you to be Jim Carrey's yes man character. All right.
Right.
So
Yeah.
you're not saying yes to everything. Certainly, like boundaries still apply. So say yes and to your boundaries. I love that phrasing and framing. And Joe, I have to tell you, so I've been working with a life coach as well for the past 6 months, 7 months
Oh,
or
wonderful.
so.
Yes.
And I have a little, like, I've taken a stand up class right now and I have a stand up bit that I'm still working on developing. But the idea is like how I'm like, I've done therapy, I've worked with a counselor. I have no qualms or issues saying, like, I do therapy, for my mental health. Like, there's no stigma around that. But I've had the hardest time admitting that I've needed a life coach because I've had to admit that like I need help with just overall life in general and saying yes and to myself and saying I'm worthy, like all this stuff that should be so ingrained in us, but yet it's not. And so I'm still working on the bit and like how to condense it, but I think
Yes.
there's something there. There's some comedy gold there. But just from my experience, I will say life coaching, I mean, it has helped me so much in this past 7 months. Like I've grown in my business, I've grown as a person, and I don't feel the effects of burnout as much as I had before. Like she's really helping me do that. So I just want to say thank you as a life coach. I know
Yes.
it can be a hard job and coaching and stuff, but the work you do is important.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. And so many ideas to grab on there, but I'm going to say I myself worked with a coach for 18 months or so. And every so often, I'll still reach out to her and just like, hey, I wanted to share this good news with you. And I love her to death because she's always positive and always enthusiastic and supportive. And she gave me some powerful phrases that I keep in mind. She always reminded me, you need to say yes to things that serve you and be
Mm-hmm.
courageous and strong enough and brave enough to say no to things that don't. And so I remind myself sometimes when I'm starting to feel overwhelmed or starting to feel like I have too much on my plate, I'll take a step back and ask myself, what am I saying yes to that's not really serving me? And I can usually eliminate one or two things off my plate. And suddenly I'm like, oh, this is how it's supposed to be. I will be honest, the first time I heard the phrase life coach, I scoffed too. And I thought that,
Mm-hmm.
is this a bit of a stand-up routine? What is this about?
Right.
Having gotten into this world and learning more about it, I could joke about it. I'm like, yeah, I can still see how it's a punchline. And I'll be the first to admit that maybe it's not for everybody. However, the people that I've talked to and from my own experience, working with a life coach has been so beneficial. One of the things that I make sure that I inform people of and possible potential clients when we do some of the complimentary calls is like, I'm not a therapist.
Mm-hmm.
I don't do therapy. I'm not a licensed therapist. I will listen, but so you understand the lines, me and my client is therapy deals with the past. Coaching, we're going to deal with the now and the future.
That's a great delineation. Yeah. Well, in terms of your life coaching meetings and calls with clients, can you give some examples of how you might structure it? So you said that the first client, she was like, let's do coaching this call and then let's do
Mhm.
improv the next call. Do you let the clients decide or you're like, hey, this is a great time to do an exercise?
Most of the time, I let the clients steer a little bit more. I always have at least 2 or 3 weeks ahead lesson plan ideas set out, and I listen to what the client wants or needs. And if like we hit a lull, that's when I'll say, "Hey, this might be a good time for this exercise." And oftentimes, what I've found is doing that exercise, and then we open up to the debrief, opens up for more coaching. And then at the end of the session, I ask for what are 2 or 3 things you want to work on this next week? How do you want me to hold you accountable next week? And what are some takeaways? And oftentimes the takeaways are like, oh, when we did that everybody go exercise and we gave ourselves permission to be silly and not judging, that was so empowering and refreshing. Okay, how can you use that the rest of this week? I'm just going to give myself permission to be silly at work. Hey, great. So it's it's a continuously evolving, almost a teaching relationship where I'm listening to trying to meet the client at where their needs are, listening to what they're asking for, and if necessary, bringing in an exercise that works. And sometimes I'll say, what you're talking about is a great position opportunity. I don't have anything right off ready. If you don't mind, can we table this until next week? And by that time, that gives me time to either go through all my books and all my list of activities, or, drop out to the applied improvisation community. Hey, this is happening. This is happening. What exercises would you recommend? And man, that's what's great about this applied improvisation network, this global
Yes.
community, is that everybody's like, try this exercise, try this exercise. And sometimes I see this exercise, I'm going to modify it. Or, oh, this exercise reminds me of that exercise. I feel more comfortable with that exercise. So it's an ongoing process during our continued relationship of coaching happens in the moment, but it also happens with part of my responsibility as a life coach is I have to come prepared. You're
Mm-hmm.
paying me a lot of money. You should expect that I am prepared for whatever happens in our hour of work together.
So I'm asking this as an example, not that I do this at all. But what do you do with the client, again, not me as an example, who is like all about it and in the moment, in the coaching is like, yeah, I'm going to do these takeaways. I feel so good about this. And then the week goes on and life gets in the way
Sure.
and they don't do the takeaways that they wanted to. And it just seems like every week is the same thing. I didn't get to do it and I didn't do it, but I wanted to. How do you handle that with a client?
So I asked, how does that feel that you didn't accomplish what you set out to?
Not good. Not
Not
good at
good.
all.
What's holding you back?
Fear, uncertainty,
Ah.
limitations. Yeah,
So
all
let's talk
those.
about that fear. Let's talk about that uncertainty. Where do you think that's coming from? How can we overcome it? What if we rephrase that fear as the imposter, or what if we rephrase that fear as the perfectionist? And what have we said in our sessions together about the imposter or the perfectionist? So that those are great questions. Taking time to listen and recognize how far are we in this process together in our relationship? What have we worked on? And oh, you're still feeling that? Here's a different activity that we can do, and let's talk about that. So if you feel that maybe the imposter is getting in your way, maybe we do an activity or give voice to the imposter. I'm going to be you and you be your imposter.
Mm,
And then in that case, so we're role playing. And that's where my
mhm.
improv skills really come into play because now I'm the character of you. Oh, I want to do this. And we can play that out. Another powerful question that I ask, because to me, really strong coaching is we know what we need to do. The coach
Mhm.
is there to help us find the path there is. So Dayna, I understand you're struggling and not getting to those activities. If a friend came to you and said that, what advice would you give them?
Yeah, I mean, I would certainly be nice to them, compassionate and
Oh,
understanding of their circumstances and maybe why they didn't get to it this week.
exactly.
Yeah, that's so powerful. The thing that I've loved about the life coaching is the accountability. And I will just say from my experience, the coach that I've worked with, I didn't do some exercises, the takeaways. I didn't do them one week.
Uh-huh.
And so the next session, and I was like, I'm sorry, I didn't do them. There's that sorry piece again. And we literally went through my whole week and like recounted what I had going on. We estimated a few areas, sleep. Let's just say I got 8 hours times seven. And we calculated that I had 80 hours of unaccounted time that I could have done these activities and takeaways. And yet I chose not to, for whatever reason, I didn't do them. But it wasn't because I didn't have time. It was because I chose to use that time elsewhere. So it was just like a really powerful thing. And she kind of held my feet to the fire and been
Yeah.
like, hey, you're using excuses, but you didn't do what you wanted to do, kind of thing. And I just love that like push of the coaching that
Yeah.
I haven't always
Yeah.
gotten from therapy, and they're different, but like that
Yeah.
push and that accountability is huge.
And my concern, as you mentioned that, is I think there's a section, probably a very small section, but a small section of the coaching community that would be like, oh, that's okay. And then come the end of your agreement or relationship or whatever package, however your coach is it, at the end of 10 weeks, nothing has been accomplished. And then that,
Mhm.
like, well, we did do this and this. Would you like to sign on for 5 more? Which to me, my goal when I start an agreement with a client is I want to get us to the point that you can go, Joe, thank you. I'll be in touch in 6 months. Or, and I'll be like, go fly, go spread your wing.
Right.
There you go, Icarus, not too close to the sun. Okay. But, and I'll reach out to past clients after 6 months. Hey, I just want to check in and see how things are going. Not trying to be a sales call, but I invested time as well.
Yeah,
And for me personally, not as a coach, but as Joe, relationships are important to me. And
just
I
like
want to know,
improv.
just like improv, and I want to know how's life going. My oldest son just graduated from high school and all his friends are still bouncing around. And I just keep telling him, like, just keep in touch. You could email me directly or through Gabe because I want to hear about all your success. I want to
Yeah.
know that you're flying, that you're spreading your wings.
And it's so nice to have someone in your corner. Just knowing someone's there in your corner to reach out to share your successes with. I don't know what it's like to be a young person right now, but I can only imagine that it's hard. And it feels like there's a lot of competition out there. And I think it's important to have those people in your corner. So it's great that you're doing that for them.
Yeah, thank you.
I know I got on the life coaching tangent, but it's top of mind because I've been doing it too. So I love this work you're doing. You mentioned the exercise Everybody Go. How does that work and how do you fit that in with your coaching?
Of course. So in a workshop, whether it's a applied improv corporate workshop or for performance, so we've got everybody in a circle, let's say 10 to 15, maybe 25 people in a circle. And one person starts, and so I'll set the example. Everybody go, and I'll just make some goofy hand gesture or body pose and a sound that goes with it. And they might complement each other. They might be dichotomous. It doesn't matter. And then everybody repeats it. However, we all have to say yes first. And I swear it takes, I can predict it without a doubt that the first time we does it, everybody just jumps in. So Dayna, I'm going to ask you to do it. Let's go ahead and do it with me. And it's going to sound weird on a podcast. But
no, I love it.
Just use your imaginations.
Yes, I love
it. Okay. Yeah. Everybody go. Aha. Remember, Dayna, you need to say a bigger sound.
I did
yes
it
first.
I'm gonna take my clown bow here.
Oh, okay. There we go.
I messed up.
Yeah, but we applaud the clown bow because you're trying and you're throwing in. So
let's do it again.
Okay. Everybody go. Woo!
Yes. Woo! Yes. Woo!
Got that part, Dayna. So I'm waiting on you to go. Everybody go.
Oh, wait. So I have to say, and I do one.
Yeah, you do a new one. Poor instructions on my part.
Another clown bow. Okay, one more time. I really want to get this. This is fun.
Okay. So you start us off.
Okay. Everybody go.
Yes. Okay. So that's exactly how it works. And a coaching session. Yay. So in a session, whether it's coaching or a workshop, in a session, then we take time to discuss, well, how does that feel to be silly? And how does that feel to take that judge, that critic, that voice inside our head that says, don't do that, and set them aside? I really emphasize, hey, the judge, that voice has no power here. If out of a 3-hour workshop, if the only thing that people walk away with is that judge has no power, then my work is done. And then we get into, especially with large groups, how does it feel to be supportive when you're silly? How does it feel when you see other people saying silly? And then we talk about the positivity of that. And that playfulness and that positivity carries on beyond the workshop. If you have an interaction with somebody and you leave them feeling positive, that can carry on for the rest of that person's day or for even maybe a day and a half or maybe even 2 days further. Positivity is infectious, and what happens in the workforce is we get so bogged down with all the heavy stuff that we let the heavy stuff get there. If we can maintain that play, that positivity without being toxic about it, then we can change the culture of our workforce that it's a place that people want to go to rather than have to go to.
Do you ever get anyone in your workshops? I assume one-on-one, they know what they're signing up for, but anyone in your workshops that is arms folded, super a wall in front of you posture, I'm too serious for this kind of play. What does this have to do with my work? Mm-hmm. Questioning why they're here. How do you handle those people?
I get that quite often. And I give everybody, but I emphasize with them, I'm like, you have permission to not participate. Mm-hmm. However, that doesn't excuse you. You still have a responsibility. I want you to be an outside objective observer. And so we'll do the activity, and then I'll pull that person into the debrief afterwards. Because oftentimes that outside objective observer can see moves and things and recognize what's happening in a different point of view than the individual that's in the moment, that's playing in the moment and responding to those situations. So now I've got the internal point of view as well as the external point of view that gives us things to talk about and to open up that discussion. And my experience has been that person stands out for one, maybe two. And as they're watching and they see, first of all, this is very low stakes. You could start to see some of the benefits and how it opens up discussion. And it kind of looks like they're having fun. I'll give it a try. I'm not going to like it, but I'll give it a try. Not 100%, but oftentimes at the end of the workshop, those are the people that are really thankful and grateful for the time that we spent together.
Yeah. And I think from a piece of it of, I'm a big people pleaser. And so when I'm not feeling like someone likes the activity, like I take it as a personal attack. And it's something I've been working on in the coaching is this is not a reflection of me. This is the reflection of this is the product that they don't like right now, or they don't understand it too. And I definitely am stronger now in my speaking to be like, that's fine to sit out. And I love your phrasing of you still have a responsibility as an observer. That doesn't mean you get to play on your phone. I want to
Right.
ask you to observe so you can participate in the debrief and bring a special perspective into the debrief. That is brilliant.
Yeah. It's very powerful and it's empowering for them. The other challenge I have sometimes is the introverts and the extroverts. And as a facilitator, my job then is to set boundaries around the extroverts to give space for the introverts. And as we go, that becomes more natural and flowing. And I think that's another side product, if you will, of studying and applying improv to a corporate culture is that
Mhm.
it does set those boundaries for the extroverts and it helps them recognize when they're being overly bearing. And I can say that because traditionally I'm a 75 to 80% extrovert myself. And I try to pay attention when I'm like, ooh, I need to pull back some. Because the introverts often have important stuff that they want to say. They just are not necessarily comfortable, especially in the same room in a meeting with an extrovert, a strong-willed extrovert. So I always put it this way is like studying improv and applying it gives us boundaries to rein in the extroverts as well as a stage and a voice to the introverts. I'm going to use it again so everybody feels seen and heard.
Bravo. I love it. Joe, I want to take the quickest of breaks. Give us a second to get some water and such, but I want to come back and talk to you about your public speaking a little bit and also working with high schoolers because I don't have any experience with that and I want to hear about that too. So let's take a quick break. We'll be right back. All right. And we're back talking with Joe Van Haecke, all about improv and life coaching and performance. And I'm loving every minute of it. Joe, thanks for sharing and just giving us a piece of yourself in this. This is wonderful.
Man, this is so much fun. I'm ready to talk more.
I want to dive into your work with high schoolers. So I've coached volleyball. I haven't done it in 5 years, but when I lived in South Carolina, I coached youth volleyball and it was really hard. Just working with high schoolers, I felt judged every single minute. And I wanted to like be their friend, but I was also their volleyball coach. So like I had to have that position of power and status and stuff. And it was a big struggle. And so what is it like doing improv and encouraging teenagers to do improv?
It might be different coming from the world of athletics to the world of
Yeah, sure.
maybe drama, or maybe it's just the teenagers here. But I love it. I find it very invigorating and validating. And in fact, when I first started working with high schoolers, I was working in small business for a multimedia interactive firm. And that's what got me into teaching at a public high school because I could have the worst day there and go spend 2 hours with these high school kids and just be reinvigorated. And they're so much fun. So we have a good time. It is some of the challenges that I see that I hear about when I talk to friends that are still teachers of right now, the TikToks and the phones, they're so distracting. And so it's like,
Yeah.
we need to put them away for 2 hours. I know that's painful, but I don't want to see them. But I work with a great group of kids, and I've been there that the upperclassmen are excited to work with me again. And they pass that energy on to the freshmen and the sophomores. So it's kind of a building its
Nice.
own cycle. And I get students that are super, super eager to learn and just have fun with it. The challenges often are of breaking down some of the habits that we've learned. Our society as a whole tells us to say no, tells us, I'm going to get a laugh by cutting down someone else, or I'm going to get a laugh by breaking down something. And that's all the antithesis of improv. Improv is we're saying yes, and we're building up rather than tearing down. So there are habits that I just have to crush. And I do it compassionately, but sometimes I'll say, look, I've asked you to stop doing that. Stop doing that. I don't know how else you're going to hear me. The other challenge, and I think this is a challenge for all improvisers, regardless of where you are on your improv journey, is to not ask questions.
Oh, but it's so hard. And sometimes the
It's
questions
so
help. But
hard.
yes, yeah, in general, the questions does not serve the scene.
Yeah. And to be fair, I know there might be some improvisers rolling their eyes, oh, we hate that rule, don't ask questions. I emphasize and I encourage, if you can change your question to a comment or a statement, you're
Mhm.
saying the same thing. And think about that. You want to give information instead of pull information, or give ideas rather than pull ideas. So that's a hard habit to break. And I still work on it. And I just teach them, I'm like, look, in an improv scene, when you're up on stage, I'm not going to be able there to point out that you're asking questions. Just try to recognize when you're asking a lot of questions and rephrase that. And if you're in a scene and your scene partner asks a question, just answer it and move on. I know when I first started, those were our two big quote unquote rules of improv. Don't say no, don't ask questions. And I rephrase them myself of don't deny and just be aware of how many questions you're asking. And I like it like this because it's okay to say no in an improv scene. If for some reason, let's say I'm carrying a cat and a mugger jumps out and it happens to be somebody, we'll get into the relationship part, but it happens to be somebody and the mugger is, give me your money or give me your cat, whatever, right? Well, I want to protect my cat because that's my character's point of view. No, I'm not giving you my cat. Well, I just said no.
Yeah.
And
Right.
if the back of my brain, this is the rule, you don't say quote unquote no. Then my brain suddenly says, hey, whoa, Joe, you just said no in a scene. That's not what you do. And then I've opened the door for the judge, the critic, the imposter, the perfectionist, the people pleaser to come and take over.
Mhm.
And now I'm so stuck in my head arguing with those guys that I'm no longer in the scene. So I really emphasize it's okay to say no, just don't deny the reality of the scene. And then questions, like I said, it's like, just answer them and move on. And don't worry about it. Because anytime that those quote unquote rules get broken, then suddenly you're opening the door, like I said, for the imposter, the critic, the perfectionist, the people pleaser. So
Mhm.
I'm off on a tangent, Dana, and I apologize. But here's my challenge. I'm a people pleaser, a perfectionist, and an overachiever.
Same. I'm exact same boat.
And so it's like a big wrestling match, and they're a tag team, and I have to bring in Hulk Hogan. Oh, yeah. Or the Macho Man, right? That has to be my persona of like, come on, imposter, I'm going to rip your leg off. Oh, yeah.
No apologies needed for that tangent because we got Hulk Hogan there wrestling with your internal imposter. That was fantastic. So is that how you deal with your imposter syndrome? You wrestle with it, or are you
It's
sometimes more gentle to it too?
it's a number of ways. I do that wrestling bit because it makes me laugh.
That's
So that
funny.
way, if I'm laughing, that takes away the imposter's power.
Yeah.
Adam Grant has a great book called Think Again. And in one of the sections in Think Again, he talks about the imposter of like, what if we think about the imposter differently? What if we think about the
Mm-hmm.
imposter instead of trying to get in your way, is trying to help you? And so sometimes with the imposter, I will listen and say, okay, I understand what you're saying. And I see how that's the better way that I've learned to deal with the imposter, the critic, the perfectionist. I yes and them.
Ooh.
So it's an improv scene going on in my head.
Uh-huh. Which, the more skilled you get can move quicker so that way you can still participate in the scene and not have to be in your head doing another scene with your imposter monster while another scene's going on, and it's a very meta thing.
I was just going to say, it's all meta on this small little minuscule stage inside my head.
Yeah.
Just quickly to get back to high schoolers, I really like working with them.
That's
And
amazing.
I do the speech competition, which is in usually January, February. And then I do an improv show with the same group of kids and a larger cast in May, right before school's out. And it is so much fun because they can be fearless.
Yeah.
And when I can find a musician that could play piano or guitar and just lay down some chords, then we can bring music in and it steps it up a notch. And there are times that I'm just blown away. I'm like, oh, and jealous that they are so fearless and willing to go out there. It's like, oh, what's holding me back in my improv shows?
It's inspiring, right? If you're feeling a tinge of jealousy, it's inspiration.
Yeah.
I'm always jealous or I don't know, amazed. Like, I would have never done it in high school. Even in college,
Right.
I was very
Yeah.
much in my head. I was extroverted in my friend group, but I was shy in general and breaking out of my shell or starting to in high school. And I just wouldn't have allowed myself to be vulnerable like that. And
Samesies.
yeah,
Samesies. So,
I'm always amazed when high schoolers are willing to do that and
yeah.
have that.
What I've also found is when I started teaching and coaching improv, I felt much more confident in my own skills as an improviser. And
Nice.
sometimes, I'm not sure if you've experienced this yet, Dana, or not. Sometimes improvisers go through a cycle of, oh, I'm burnt out. Sometimes, and it hasn't happened for me in a while, yet I remember in the past, there are times I think I'm done. And then it goes into the season of working with the students again. And I get all inspired and refreshed. I'm like, yeah, I can't wait to do improv on my own again.
And it is a cycle. Sometimes that's maybe your boundaries flaring up of just, like, hey, you're doing too much right now. I'm
Yes.
tired. And it's not, you don't have to quit improv forever. You just need a little break, right?
Just need a break. Yep.
I wanted to ask, so is there an actual an improv competition or it's a speech competition? I know I'm getting in the weeds of this, but I think it's fascinating.
That's okay. So it's speech contest. And then within that realm, that umbrella of speech contest in this season, which usually lasts late November through mid-February, there are different categories, such as musical theater. There's a musical theater person that directs the students that audition for a musical theater.
Oh,
And
nice.
they'll do, I think they're limited to 10 minutes, like a 10-minute. And so one group might be doing Wicked and another group might be doing Carrie and another group might be doing Chicago and so on. And then there are 3 rounds. The first round, you're judged by one judge and they'll give you a rating of a 1, 2, or a 3. The next round is 3 judges. And then in addition to the ratings, they may nominate you to go on to All-State. And that's the ultimate honor. So in the improv world, and there are things that the improviser in me bristles at, but after doing this for 20 years, I'm like, this is how it is. This is putting a little constraints on improv. They get 3 suggestions, and those are drawn from an envelope. And every year there are new different suggestions. So some suggestions might be like making pizza for the first time. The elves go on strike, or squirrels in a tree. And these are actual suggestions that I've seen. They're lost in Walmart, trying to do this and everything goes wrong. Someone has claustrophobia. So they draw those 3, and then they have 2 minutes. The students have 2 minutes to choose which one, and then they get to plan. And that's the part that I hate. And so in rehearsals, when I'm coaching them, I give them 1 minute. I said, you've got a minute to talk about. And I talk about, maybe you've heard this or not, I talk about core, and I've heard it labeled a different way, but core stands for character, objective, relationship, and environment. And I often say, I want you to focus first thing on what's our relationship. Sometimes the suggestion gives them their environment or characters. So some of the work is done for them. Yeah. And then they have up to 5 minutes to perform their scene. One of the fascinating things that's come out of this, and I was working with a group of students, and this is maybe 15 years ago, but we were talking, and I'm like, what you never see at contest is a little musical improv. What if we just started tapping out a beat and started singing, or doing our scene and breaking into song and then coming back into the scene? Yes. And they're like, oh. I said, or like, you never see anything serious or dramatic. It's always, and some schools can't necessarily afford to have their own improv coach. So oftentimes it's the drama director or drama teacher of that small school that's like, you guys are funny, go do improv. Or I'm going to teach this and hand out the different categories. So sometimes it's like we were talking at the beginning of the show, those first time improvisers, oh, I've got to be wacky and funny and silly with a silly accent. And I'm just going to ramble on and I'm not going to listen because my character is so funny to this scene. Okay. So I mentioned that. And so I had these two girls as seniors. They did a serious scene every time. And their first two were so powerful. Their first suggestion was at a high school reunion.
Oh, nice.
And so they did a high school reunion, and it was two friends that had lost touch after high school. As the scene progresses, we learn that one was super mad at the other one because she disappeared, especially when I really needed you when my mom died.
Oh,
And it was
man.
all this discovery. By the end of the scene, we learned that the mom was involved in a car accident, and it was the best friend that had caused the car accident and felt so guilty she had disappeared.
Oh my God.
There were crickets. And you could hear a little, and they did it so well that you could hear the like little sniffing of the nose. And I was sitting next to a friend of mine from another school, and he was just a parent. He wasn't a coach or anything. And he turned to me, looked at me, he's like, "Was that good? Was that okay? I've never seen anything like that." And I'm like, "That was perfect."
Yeah.
The next, and so then 2 weeks go by for the next round of competition. They did Stuck in a Dream, and they morphed it a little bit. So one of them was in a coma. And so she set that up, and then we go into the coma. So she's having this dream in a coma, and her scene partner, they were in a very tight relationship. Maybe they were married, but it was like, it's time. And so they go through this whole thing in the dream and then comes out, and then the scene partner is in the hospital room, and her partner's in a coma, and she reaches over and unplugs the machine, and that's the end of their scene.
Wow.
And it was, if you've ever been in a play, or maybe you felt this, Dayna, when you're doing a show, that the audience is like, we're going to sit back here, lean back, and we're enjoying it. But something happens that triggers, and suddenly everybody's invested, and you can feel the audience lean forward in their seats.
Yeah.
I physically saw that everybody, the whole audience, leaned forward in their seats in this small little schoolroom where this Stuck in a Dream improv scene was going on.
How powerful.
So powerful.
Oh my God. Wow. I have chills from that. Just you retelling the scene.
Yeah.
I'm sure in person it's brilliant. And I think that speaks to the power of improv and performance, right?
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
we can have these emotional effects on our audience.
Right. And some of the best improv that I've seen has had just a mix of that, right? It's, oh, this is
Yeah.
powerful and dramatic going on. And then every so often it gets, oh, that was a funny line. And some of that, especially in long form, some of that laughter is much more authentic and felt deeper when we're portraying
Yes.
on stage, and our audience can make that connection of like, oh, I've been there.
Yeah. Joe, just talking about the public speaking competitions, how do you feel about public speaking? Have you had to learn to love it, or did you always love it? I mean, you seem very comfortable in it as a teacher and such. So, like, what's your public speaking journey been like?
I'm going to go back to when I first did stand up. And that's how my journey started with that stand up class. I was really nervous. And my first joke, because in addition to writing my material and stuff, I started paying attention to what other stand-ups do. And I'm not sure if I was watching something on cable and and I know that here's the host, the MC, and oftentimes the comic will get up and make a little joke at the MC's expense. And so the guy giving the class had this big pompadour. And so I kind of like, hey, let's give a nice little pan for Jimmy John and his Lion King haircut. And it fell flat.
Oh,
And
no.
I was like, Irk. And then I get into my first joke that I was prepared for, and that hit. And that feedback from the audience was so rewarding. And then the next thing I know, my set was over. So it's taken me a while to become comfortable, and then to recognize that the host for an improv show, like doing comedy sports, we have the ref, or short form shows often have a host that get the suggestion and introduce the next activity or the next game. That's a different skill set than being an improviser in the scene. So doing that, becoming comfortable hosting, and then being a stand-up teacher in a classroom has all kept feeding itself. So I'm much more comfortable being a facilitator. Yet I still get nervous, and I honor those nerves. You can't never experience them. You can't
Mm-hmm.
never get over that fear. You just have to recognize it and go, wait, wait, wait. So oftentimes when I'm going to a workshop, especially a corporate workshop, when they're paying me a lot of money to be here for 3 hours, I have to make sure I deliver. I'll sit in my car and self-talk and listen to the imposter, and yes, and the imposter in all those voices, but I'll remind myself of every single thing that I've done in my life up to now has prepared me for this moment. And I'll share that with my coaching clients as well. Everything that you've done has prepared you for this moment. Now, I haven't gotten into keynote speaking yet, but that's something on my radar, maybe further on down the road. However, I love doing workshops more and being that facilitator because it's so much fun when you start a workshop and people are like, I can't do improv. And 90
Mm-hmm.
minutes, 2 or 3 hours later, they realize I just did that when I didn't think I could do that. What else can I do?
What other limitations am I setting on myself that are self-imposed?
Exactly. That's where my public speaking comes in. And I just love doing it. And now I look forward to opportunities to get up, and I'm looking forward to speaking. And in fact, it's gotten me to the point that my niece is getting married later this year, and they've asked me to do the service. And I'm like, yes, please. Here we go.
Yes, and
Right.
oh, that's amazing. You're going to officiate this. Oh, that's
Yeah.
wonderful.
I'm torn between improvising the whole thing and getting audience participation or actually writing out something nice. And I think I'm going to go with writing something nice, but that's where I'm leaning. So
You can have some flexibility. If something comes up in the moment, you can improvise,
Right.
but you'll have a plan. Yeah. Oh
Exactly.
man, they've chosen well. I'm sure you'll be
Oh,
a great
thank you. Thank you.
officiant.
I'm very excited and looking forward to it.
You mentioned keynoting. I haven't done a whole lot of that. I know that it's where a lot of the like money is, I guess. It gets
Mhm.
a lot of prestige, a lot of attention, but I really believe that the work is done in the workshops because a keynote is broad and I feel like it's kind of surface level. It's got to be simple for people to get and remember, but the real work can be done in the workshops. They're usually smaller. You can dive in, people can have a voice and share, and you just get more takeaways in a workshop than a keynote. So I'm with you. I lean towards the workshops. I will always welcome and say yes and to any speaking opportunity, but the workshops always have a special place in my heart.
Of course, exactly.
Well, Joe, this podcast focuses on creative outlets, and our goal is to encourage listeners to try new things. It sounds like you have a new thing coming up with being an officiant, but any other creative outlets that you're dabbling in or want to dabble in besides improv, performing, speaking, teaching, stand up?
I mentioned a book earlier, just kind of joking about it, but there's ideas there, and I just need to get out of my way and make time every day to write for 15 or 20 minutes because eventually I'll have that book finished. I also have an idea for a musical, and
Ooh.
I have 2 iterations of it. Again, I just need to get out of my way and make time to finish the 3rd iteration because I think that one might be the one that sticks. Then back into the improv world, I just turned 55 this year. My goal, so I'm doing a 55 and 55. And my goal is to do 55 improv things with
Ooh.
55 different unique improvisers.
Like what? What are things? What are the things you can do?
I started off last week with an open mic, and I worked with 2 other people that I've had never met, just met like maybe the week before, and we did a 15-minute improv set. That counts.
Yeah.
The improv scene in Des Moines is growing. So I know many of those people, but I haven't performed with them. I want to jump out in there. I want to get back to Kansas City and touch base with some of the people that I started with. Some are still doing improv and some aren't, and somehow work with them, maybe in a show. Dayna, I'm going to count this if that's okay, because we've had a lot of fun and we've really done a deep dive into improv and coaching and applied improv and how it all overlaps and comes together and how improv can be transformational. I'm going to count this. So you're number 3.
Yes, absolutely. I was going to say this should definitely count. This is amazing. This is an improv thing. I love that because I know people who are doing like improv shows. I had on a guest, Fernando, who was trying to do 100 improv shows in 2023, and he's well on his way. And I'm like,
Awesome.
that's so daunting. Even like if I did the
Yeah.
year, like 23 improv shows in 23, I'm like, ooh, but I like improv
Yeah.
things because
Yeah.
that opens the door and kind of yes ands that idea of like just anywhere I do improv, that counts. I like that.
Yeah. So it's up to me to define that. John Acuff, who is a writer in the coaching and leadership world, writes about, hey, you know what? You're your own boss. So you're the one that gets to determine what counts as an improv thing.
Exactly. You know, it's funny, just going back to the life coaching thing real quick. I've been doing a lot of work with psychological safety and applied improv and how those two intersect and how the skills of applied improv can help psychological safety in workplaces. And I've been developing these presentations and workshops. And I was talking with my life coach about it. And then we got on to other stuff. And at the end, she said, it sounds like you haven't had very good psychological safety with yourself.
Oh.
And I was like, oh my God, like light bulb,
Yeah.
boom, explosion in my head. I talk all of this stuff about tips and tricks and ideas and best practices of creating psychological safety for everyone in the workplace. And yet I haven't created it for myself. That was huge to hear.
Yeah. That's life coaches sometimes will have insight into that you, had you not
Can't
had a
see.
life coach, yeah, you can't see, you'll never see it. And then they bring it to light. You're like, oh my God, that was amazing.
But that goes back to like, you're your own boss.
Yeah.
I'm my own boss in my podcast and my business. And I love the idea of psychological safety. And yet, am I doing it for myself as a solo business owner? You know, like we think about it, workplaces like these giant corporations, but like single solo business owners, how are you showing up for yourself in your workplace? Anyway, all that's like that's huge mindset shift. So I'm all about you're your own boss. You can choose and select what counts as your improv thing.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right, Joe, final question. I usually end with this. You've kind of already answered it, but I think you've got more responses and answers here. So, yes and or growth mindset. How do you embody that yes and or growth mindset in your life?
Man, I just love to learn. And I keep that open mindset all the time. So when ideas come that I see as like, this is an opportunity for me to meet somebody new or to experience something different or to learn about something that I don't know anything about, I just say yes to it. And that yes and transformation opens itself up to a growth mindset. So it's always challenging itself. And what's beautiful is I can go out and learn something new, and eventually, somehow, some way, it's going to make it into some of my improv, whether it's in a rehearsal or just talking theory or actually in a show, somehow that comes out. I'm really excited because I did some reading about octopus earlier today because I saw a video
Oh,
on, was it TikTok? No, I don't do TikTok. Reddit. There was something on Reddit. I'm like, oh, an octopus. And I think octopus are cool, period. And what happened is these fishermen had pulled up their nets and there was an octopus in it. So they had this octopus on the deck of their boat. And I was curious. And so I'm always, yes, ending my curiosity as well. I'm curious, how long can an octopus survive out of water? Thank you, almighty Google. There's the answer. 2 to 3 hours, but really after 20 minutes, they need to get back in the water or they're going to be damaged.
good to know.
And then there's this whole discussion on Reddit about lives of octopus. And I was like, fascinating, because I believe that they're space aliens and they're doing research on us from the ocean.
Oh, yeah. No, we
Yeah.
are not the only beings in this universe. That's for certain. That's a very no but mindset. Like there's other beings out there
Yep.
for
Yep. Yep.
sure. I'm all about that. Yeah. Well, and I'll just add, like, this concept of yes and, it's the reason I have my business. I'm sure you would say
Yeah.
the same for yourself. It's the reason I've started this podcast. If I don't have yes and, I immediately go to, no, I'm not ready. No, what do I know about improv? No, I'm not experienced enough. No, I have to go back to school. No, I'm nervous. No, what will people think of me? And I will no because my idea until I don't do it. But if I say yes and to myself and be a good boss to
Yeah.
myself, I create something that I can't even imagine I would have ever created 5 years ago without the concept of yes and. And you've definitely shown that and highlighted that in your work throughout this episode as we've talked too.
Well, thank you. There's nothing more frustrating when talking to somebody and you hear all their plans and you're trying to be positive and encourage them and yes, Andy them. And then they just keep getting in their way. And it's like,
Uh-huh.
I don't want to be rude because I only know and just met you. You have great ideas. What's holding you back? Why are you putting this way? Well, it's like, okay. So good on you for saying yes and to yourself.
Yes. And I've loved every minute of this episode, Joe. I love your story. You are very well versed in the improv world. You're working with teenagers, you're doing one-on-one life coaching, you're doing applied improv. I love the multifaceted approach that you're taking to this. It's wonderful. And I know our listeners are loving it too. So where can they find out more about you?
Thanks, Dayna. They can find me on LinkedIn at Joe Van Haecke. I'm also active on Facebook, but LinkedIn is really my business approach, or on the web at my website, which is inspirememrv.com. That's inspirememrv.com.
Is that what your students call you, Mr. V?
Oftentimes, yeah.
Yeah, I love it.
And Dayna, if it's okay, I just want to send out a quick shout out to all the people in Kansas City Comedy Sports. I know I've thanked them a number of times, but when I started 20 years ago, there were days that the small introvert or the shy little boy that's not there anymore was still pretty strong at that time. And I know some of them were like, we're not sure if Joe's going to make it. They took me under their wings. They became friends as well as improv mentors and coaches. And I've learned so much. And I look around at my life and how grateful I am for what I have, that I wouldn't be where I am now and so involved and excited about improv had they not done that for me. So I always want to say thank you to them.
Oh my gosh. Are they still there? Is there still a Comedy Sports in Kansas City?
They dropped out of the franchise, but they're called Comedy City
Okay.
now, as far as I know. And some of them are still performing, maybe not necessarily with Comedy City, but in other realms as well.
What about your teams? Is it Comedy Experiment?
Comedy Experiment, we often perform October through May. So we kind of work around more of a school schedule. And then the growing scene here in Des Moines are finding more and more venues to perform at. So we're looking for other places to perform as well. But Comedy Experiment performs in a black box theater inside our large auditorium where like the traveling Broadway shows come through. So there's the main
Cool.
stage, and then there's the black box theater. We perform in that black box. So oftentimes our crowd is fighting with, well, we want to go see Phantom. No, you want to come see improv.
Either way, they'll get a great show, whatever choice they make.
Yep.
Joe, this has been so much fun. I've had a blast. I don't really want to stop the conversation, but I will just for the sake of time and such. But I love your positivity, and it's not toxic positivity. We didn't get into that, but it's not this like toxic positivity. It's just having a yes and mindset creates this positivity and optimism in your life. And you're a great example of that.
Thank you, Dayna. I'm honored. It's been a blast. This time has gone just like that. And I find that happens a lot when you get people that are excited and talking about something they're passionate about. I love this art form so much and really can't wait to apply it more every day.
Joe, I can't wait till our paths cross. And I say when, because I think they will, especially in the applied improv world. The time I see you in person, as long as you're accepting hugs, I will give you a big hug. I can't wait till our paths cross and we can be in the same improv space. That would be amazing.
Looking forward to it myself. I am a big hugger as well. So I've got one with your name on it. I'm going to put it in my pocket
Yes.
and it comes out when we meet.
Oh, fantastic. Joe, until we meet again, thank you so much for your time today. And I can't wait to see all the things you accomplish in Des Moines and beyond.
Looking forward to it, Dayna. Thank you again.
And thank you for joining us today and being a part of this conversation. I absolutely loved it. I had such a blast. I loved the everybody go exercise, and I just messed up. Like, I swear I was listening, but sometimes you just don't take in the directions for whatever reason. And it's fine. Like, you made a mistake and you just take a little clown bow. You're like, I recognize I messed up. I own that I messed up. And it highlighted his point that a lot of times people forget the yes part and they go straight into doing the thing. And it's important that we recognize that we're saying yes to the activity before jumping in and doing it too. Like, why are we doing this activity? Because we've chosen to say yes to it, I think, is the point of the exercise. We were having so much fun. We didn't really debrief after it, but I think that's the point. And also, like, get everybody on board, get the group mind and ensemble together. It's great fun. Joe is the best. He's so much fun. I can imagine he's such an amazing applied improv facilitator. I bet he brings a lot of magic and energy and excitement to his groups that he gets to talk to. And also, I love that he works with teens and gets to see them and like early freshman, sophomore year and watch their growth throughout high school. I know I've said this before and many times, but I just always admire people who've done theater and improv and such in high school, because I just wasn't there in high school. I didn't have the confidence. Certainly it wasn't on my radar, but it wasn't on my radar because I held myself back so much and I limited myself and I was so nervous and scared and shy and I hated being put on the spot. And I like to think like, oh, what could have been, but it's not that. It's more of, I wish I had the tools and the knowledge and the confidence that I have now. Back when I was younger, I just feel like I would have expanded my horizons more. And that's okay. I don't need to have any regrets or any feelings of like wanting to time travel back. I think it's just a fun thing to highlight. And it sounds like Joe's doing amazing work with those teens and helping them just learn all the skills of improv and how it helps in their lives as they go on to college and beyond. That's so cool. I also love the life coaching thing. That's so unique. I haven't heard of that elsewhere, incorporating improv into the life coaching. I incorporate improv into public speaking coaching with one-on-one sessions. And I feel like that kind of fits, like, public speaking wise, being able to do some of these yes and exercises and thinking quickly on the spot. Certainly in the one-on-one setting, it's a little different from being on stage, but my thought process is always, if you can think quickly on the spot in a small, lower stakes situation, then when you get put into a higher stakes situation, you'll have the confidence and the knowledge and the wherewithal to be just fine in that higher stakes situation. But I love the idea of using improv games and exercises as a tool to facilitate life coaching and life learning and development. I think that's so cool. I never thought of it in the realm of life coaching, and it sounds like he's doing amazing work and getting to capture both like the life skills that people need and then also have them practice and develop and learn some takeaways from those experiences. Amazing work. It's so exciting. I know I've probably said it a million times. It's so cool. It's so cool. But it's all about the discoveries that you're making. And one of the things I love, 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 love about having this podcast and doing this work is I get to meet people from all over. And sometimes I get in my head of like, oh, this is so much work, everything's so busy, and I get bogged down by all the mess and the chaos and the stuff and the tasks and the things to do. But when I step out, I'm always amazed. I'm like, I've gotten to meet so many cool people and improvisers and facilitators from having this podcast and having a space for us to talk. Certainly, I think people and applied improvisers would be open to having meetings and discussions and like brainstorming, but it's really fun to have this podcast realm where we can record our discussions and share it with others. So I'm kind of celebrating my successes here because it was a busy week and I've been tired and I've gotten a little bit down. And so just, having this conversation with Joe, it's been a lot of fun. And it's been fun meeting Joe and others like Joe who are just so excited about the possibilities of applied improv. I think Joe said it. He's absolutely in love with this art form. I am too. The possibilities are endless in what you can do with it and learn from it. And I truly believe, as well as I'm sure Joe would agree to this too, I truly believe that everyone can benefit from the skills of improv. And really, everyone uses improv every day. We just don't think about it. If we had the concept of yes and accept and build, and there are no mistakes, only opportunities, and make your scene partner look good. All the kind of big principles and tenets of improv, if we had those top of mind for every interaction we have with people and every task that we do, it'd be interesting to see how different those things are. And I know the world is hard. I don't want to put like rose-colored glasses on. I don't want to have this toxic positivity. I recognize the world is hard and there are lots of rules, processes, procedures, systems to follow. At the time of recording this, the submersible through Ocean Gate that went down to try to explore the Titanic with the 5 passengers on board has just been announced recently, like within a day or two, that there were no survivors on board and it might have had an internal explosion. And by the time this comes out, there may be more details that are released through this. And I use that as an example to say that like rules, processes, procedures, systems are all important. They're all there for our safety. And, there might be some investigations that come out later that say that some of those safety procedures and processes weren't followed quite as well in this circumstance. And I'm being very vague here because I just don't know the full story, but I know the outcome and I've read a few things. And the whole thing is just so scary and terrifying. And I feel so sad for the victims and their families for such a preventable thing, too. And so I recognize the importance of safety and how we need to be like hyper vigilant in the safety and procedures and systems in place. So I'm not saying to do away with any of that, but yes, and involves us listening and even accepting situation. And this is where psychological safety comes into place, creating an environment where employees and people feel free to speak up about concerns about safety and such. In this workplace, for example, or in others, just if something doesn't feel right, they feel comfortable to speak up and share that maybe something's been overlooked and that it needs to be looked at more, and then for it to be heard and listened to and looked into. I know I'm getting on a tangent here about psychological safety, but psychological safety relates to yes and growth mindset. And also it creates innovation and performance amongst teams and creativity. And it's just so important. And also that submersible accident has certainly been top of mind too. So yes and is a great tool. And we really do live in a yes, but or a yeah, but world. So how can you combat that? And again, not be like overly optimistic in everything, because that's not authentic. But how can you say yes and to yourself and to others, even during difficult times or times of uncertainty? All right, I'll get off my yes and soapbox, but this has been a fantastic episode. Really enjoyed it. If you enjoyed it too, or you want to share anything that came up in this episode, please, please, please reach out to me at Dayna, Dayna, at improv-speaking.com. And I love hearing from you, so send whatever thoughts you have. I'm always happy to chat, as you can probably tell. I love talking about this stuff. You can also reach out to me on social media. I'm on Instagram at improv-speaking. On LinkedIn, I'm at Dayna Gowan, and my website is improv-speaking.com. On Instagram, I've started this pod mom character to help talk about the podcast, and I call it my little baby podcast, Improv-Speaking. And I think it's funny, and so that's why I do it. And also, I think it's a funny way to promote the podcast through the lens of a pod mom. Like, I think about the podcast all the time. It's constantly on my mind. So I do feel like it is my like little baby project and thing. So it is my little baby. And I treat it like that. And so therefore I am a pod mom. And I've been having fun with those videos. Sometimes I go a little quiet, things are busy, I don't get to post, but I try to post a few videos each week with pod mom involved. I've realized too with my pod mom character that I don't have a voice that goes with it. Like it's literally just me as a pod mom. So I don't know. I don't know if it's too late. That's a limitation I set on myself, or a worry if it's too late or not. I could try a voice and see how it goes. And I don't know, just have fun with it. And that's what I'm doing. I'm having fun being a pod mom. So if you want to follow me or pod mom and all her adventures, you could follow that on Improv-Speaking. All right, I want to remind you of Joe's slogan or motto to start living a yes and life in a yeah but world. Go out and do that today. Enjoy your day and have so much fun. Thank you for supporting Improv-Speaking and checking this episode and other episodes out. I'm so glad you're here. Go out and say yes and flex your creative thinking. I'll talk to you next time.